Trauma. Everyone has it. No one talks about it. It seems easier to stay silent, ignore it, or stuff it than it does to honor it, learn from it, and finally heal. Trauma is debilitating, yet so often we suffer in silence. Trauma is not meant to be battled alone, and we are no longer going to suffer in silence. Together, we are creating a safe place to speak, to share our stories and grow our strength as we heal. Together, we are giving a voice to those who have been silenced, bringing darkness into light and letting God use our stories. Today, we find ourselves again. We relight our spark and let it light up the world. Stop SIS is a nonprofit organization dedicated to educating on issues of trauma and trafficking, as well as the amazing power of the healing journey. Welcome to Stop SIS. Hey, you guys. Big welcome back to Stop SIS, Stop Suffering in Silence. My name is Denise Walsh. I'm here with co-host Rachel Timothy. And we have a guest today who is going to share with us a bit, not only of her story working with survivors over the past 30 years, but the good, bad, and the ugly, right? If you have a healing journey, then you also have hard stuff that happens. And so she's been in ministry for 30 some years, kind of always housing somebody in crisis, which means she's seen a lot of hard, but yet she's also seen a lot of grace and a lot of hope and a lot of growth in her journey. And she, because of this heart she has for survivors, she is now a granny in our granny program. And after a 90-day U-turn, survivors are paired up with a granny to keep the support going. And so we're going to get to talk to her about that too. So big Stop SIS welcome to Laurel Grider.
Yay. Hello, thank you for having me.
Well, we're going to get into the granny program and how that has worked for you and why, but first I do want to hear a bit like, why are survivors so near and dear to your heart? Like, where did this start for you?
I think, this really takes me deeper than I've really been able to think in my 30 years. Because even just sharing just before we got started, I look back and I go, wow, we really have, like, my husband and I have been married for over 31 years. And even just a few months into our marriage, we were housing a single woman who needed a place to live. And then as we began to have kids, we have 4 daughters. We always had extras. Like there was just always extras. And, we took in a missionary, we took in a single college student. We rescued a girl from the crisis pregnancy center whose mom had abandoned her. Just always had that heart to love people where they are and to love them to a better place. And honestly, I think part of it probably goes back to my childhood. And I'm the oldest of 4. And between the ages of 5 and 7, I went through some pretty traumatic events, like life-altering events, from my house catching on fire and losing all of my clothing, to my grandfather dying. And then the day before I turned 5, my sister and brother twins were born. And in my little 5-year-old brain, all I knew was that on my birthday, no one came and my mom wasn't there. And so I kind of felt abandoned. And this was just how my little 5-year-old self perceived life. And so it took me into my 40s to really come to terms with what I was still, like, those things that were still triggering me, those things that were still, trauma in my life that I'd never fully identified or been given tools or known how to kind of process. And so I think part of that, and my husband, he has a history of trauma and abandonment. And, like, while his family loved him dearly, they were very broken in a lot of ways. And so we both kind of, have that history. And so I think in turn, I don't want anyone to ever feel left out.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone to ever feel lost or like they don't belong.
Well, we often say that our why, right, is born out of a blessing or a burden. And
Yeah.
so it seems like you see the wallflower and you're like, come be my friend. You pick the person who's lost. You have your eyes open for the person who may feel left behind, and you give them a space to even physically call home.
Yeah. That makes me cry. I don't think I've ever put my finger on that. My husband's the same way. Like if someone is sitting there by themselves, I'm like, no, you need to come belong. You don't need to sit there and feel like you don't have any friends or connection, or you're not part of this. I want you to feel welcome.
Okay, I have to share a Laurel story that I think is just absolutely amazing because her and I got to do ministry a little bit together before, Stop SIS came around, and we were down in Orlando, okay? And we were doing ministry all throughout the day. And then that night, everybody kind of went off to their own places or whatever. Well, we found out the next day, like these women come up and they see Laurel and they're like, hey, girl, so good talking to you last night. And Laurel goes, yeah, we kind of had church in the hot tub last night. And I kid you not, there were these women who needed to talk, and Laurel was there and she was present and she listened and she cared. And it was just so neat to see the impact on those women. And we laughed, church in the hot tub. I mean, that works.
Might as well. No better place.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there was a young girl down there who was totally drunk, just so inebriated, and she was prime to be taken advantage of. Like she was literally just going from person to person, and just so I got her phone. I said, open your phone for me, sweetie. She opened her phone and I just found mom and I called her mom, and her mom was up in the hotel room and came down and got her, and we got her back to her room safely. So yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. And I love what you're housing them. You are seeing a situation that could go sour, right? And you're intervening it. How many people have what they call the bystander effect, where they go, oh, look at that over there. Hope somebody does something about it, but they don't actually step in and do something themselves.
Yeah. I mean, what is love if it's not physical? If you can't tangibly show, I can say I love you, but if I don't tangibly show you by meeting a physical need, I mean, that's what Jesus did. He met the physical needs of people. He healed them whole, he healed their sicknesses and their diseases, but he also met physical needs.
Yeah, absolutely.
So cool.
Do you have any other stories of people that you have taken in, or situations you've experienced and been able to meet a physical need and see the healing journey throughout?
Yes. So I mentioned earlier, we rescued a young girl. She was about 18, maybe 19 at the time, from a crisis pregnancy center. Her mom had abandoned her because she was too far to have an abortion. And someone said, hey, we have a need. Does anybody have, and I just said, babe, I think we need to take her in, and we just, sometimes it's just ready, jump, ready, aim, fire, ready, fire, aim. That's it. Ready, fire, aim. And so we just didn't even think twice about taking her in, and then, was able to start, get her on medical coverage and getting food and getting her initial OBGYN appointments. And then over the next few months, she was able to reconcile with her mom and get things right there, and went back home and had a baby. And she's gone on to go to college and taking care of her child now. And I mean, like, and she still reaches back out to us and just thanks us for that time in her life. And like, you just never know the impact just a simple yes can make in someone's life.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when you heard about the Granny program, what drew you to participate in this?
I so admired just reading Rachel's story and reading, how her granny impacted her life. And it just brought back so many memories to the young girls that the Lord has brought in our paths along the 31 years that we've been married, and the lives that we've been able to just, and I understand I'm not there to fix, and I'm not there to heal, and I'm not there, but sometimes just that other voice of love and consistency and I saw what God did in Rachel's life through her granny. And I thought, I just felt like I needed to, just like the others. I'm like, I think I need to say yes to this. Like sometimes you just know, like, I don't necessarily need to know all the answers or the how or anything. I just think I need to say yes and trust the Lord to lead me in the process.
Which was super helpful because I mean, she's a pioneer in our granny program. Like, we are just starting it out. If you hear my dog in the background, he is gnawing off my hand as we speak. But she's a pioneer in it, and we didn't have a whole lot of answers. Like, we just knew we wanted to have these good, strong Christian women to stand beside our survivors. Mm-hmm. And we knew we were going to kind of learn along the way. And Laurel did. She was one of them that just said, yes, I'm in, let's do this. And I think one of the interesting things that Laurel shared in one of our monthly granny meetings was that, she feels like she's helping her survivor, but she also feels the impact on herself. Like, she's having to dig a little bit deeper into some of her own stuff.
Yes.
Which is a healing portion for you as well.
Absolutely. Like, when we share, what I love is that I don't necessarily go in there with this agenda. We just connect for an hour, and I just really trust the Holy Spirit to lead and guide the conversation. I always bring it back to a godly perspective, a biblical perspective, bring in that spiritual component of healing. I think, we are not just physical, emotional beings. We are spiritual beings, and there's a very spiritual side of our healing that is necessary to kind of like well round that whole journey and process. And so even as I've just gotten to know my survivor and spend time with her, she'll share things with me, and then it'll trigger, not necessarily a bad way, or it'll bring a memory, and then I'll be able to share something with her. And then it kind of gives me this new thought and perspective, like, oh, I never looked at that. Like, that's how I've processed life because of that trauma. And so even some of the things that she's like, the tools and things on her journey, I'm like, oh yeah, I could use that too. So it isn't just me all pouring out. It is a very tangible back and forth giving and receiving.
And that feels good to the survivor as well, because it's so cool. It's a part of the grief process, right? To feel like you're giving back and sharing what you've learned.
Yes.
And I love that it feels reciprocal on both ends.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm so proud of her, because I'm like, I've been just pouring into her, and just like, sometimes when you go through such a hard thing, it's hard for you to say anything nice about yourself. And she texted me the other day and she said, I'm using your saying. And I'm like, what's that? She says, I'm worthy because God says I'm worthy. And she wasn't able to say that out loud. So, just to know that, God is just using me to help her see her how he sees her.
And that's this ministry to a T. Like, you don't have to fix the trauma. You don't have to take the hurt away. You're just a being there that can help her see how God sees her. That's it. Mm-hmm. That is it right there. I love it.
Yeah.
Rachel has even created a granny booklet, kind of. Is that what you describe it? And so it's like a workbook, because we thought it might be awkward at the first little bit before we get to know each other, just to be like, hi, how are you? So she created a workbook. So for the first few kind of meetings, there's something specific to talk about. So the goal is that the granny and the survivor work on it on their own, and then they come together, and then they can have this mutually, this guided conversation, really, that helps them to get to know each other, and then it becomes more organic from there. So what is a part of that workbook, and why was that helpful?
I think just, going through the initial steps, everything from like where they are in their spiritual walk, what kind of music they like to listen to, what maybe their belief is about God, different aspects of that. And because at the very beginning of a relationship, like, I understand you're not naturally going to be very open with one another. You're not naturally going to want to like just share each and everything. Like there's walls. And so you have to build that bridge of trust. You have to build that relational equity. And then once you have that, it's amazing how those walls kind of come down. And then you're able to have moments. Like I was able to have a moment with her where it was just a few days after one of her therapy sessions. And it was a really, really hard session. And she hadn't fully like processed it. And in that moment, she just like the floodgates opened, and she was just really able to kind of process that moment with me. And it was kind of one of those things where I'm like, I'm just so thankful that you trust me for this vulnerability, and
Well, and if you hadn't have been there, she would have processed it alone.
yeah.
And that's where a lot of these survivors are right now, is they feel so alone, like they are suffering in silence. Maybe they do get an hour of therapy a week, but then what? Like that's a whole lot of time to just let it all stew and become bigger and scarier. But when you have somebody that you can voice it to and cry with,
Mm-hmm.
it brings me to tears thinking about it and thinking of your survivor and how special she is. And I'm just so thankful that God worked this out. It is a beautiful relationship between you two.
It's been great. And I just think God can take our yes and make just such a beautiful thing out of it. Like there's such a blessing in obedience.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a biblical, like when you look back through just some of the stories in the Bible of, Abraham saying yes, Moses saying yes, just these simple yeses. They didn't have it all figured out. And there was a huge journey ahead of them. But, the Lord is just so kind and so loving, and he just leads you every step of the way. And so, like, I think what's in it for me, it's all the WIFM. Like that's the kind of the generation and the temperature of the age that we are in, and what's in it for me. And time is one of those commodities that we don't have a lot of, and it isn't a sacrifice to tear away from the family and spend that time, but it's always worth it. And I'm just like, okay, Lord, you've poured into me, and I've been so blessed over these past 30 years, and it is just a blessing to be able to pour back out. And like I said, I learned so much in the process. Like this is a healing journey for me too.
So do you feel like you had it all together going into the Granny program, or?
No, I just said yes, scared. Like I did it afraid. Like I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what's expected of me. I think I've asked that, like, how long does this go on?
Yeah.
I don't know, but you know what? I just trust in the Lord to continue to lead, and it's been a great experience so far.
That's awesome.
Rachel, so one of the cool things about Rachel over these past year and a half ish, 2 years, I don't know, we should keep track of when we first started connecting. Year and a half is we've seen her color come back, right? So we'll have a whole episode on the color personalities and like how trauma takes away your color, and then you got to rediscover yourself again.
Yeah.
And so Rachel has a heart for others, but she also is a bit of a goal getter. And when she wants something, she figures out a way to create it. And so throughout the Stop SIS program and really figuring out what we're doing, I've seen your color come back, Rachel. I've seen you have a spark, have an idea, and then execute it and figure it out and, get feedback and ask for help. And this Granny program is a fruit of that, of not just like, this would be cool if, but like you diligently saying, let's do it. And this is what it will look like. And this is the workbook that we can take people through, and let's figure it out along the way. And I think that, like, how does it feel, Rachel, to have your baby out into the world impacting people?
Oh, it feels surreal. It really does. But every time we do our monthly calls and all of the grannies like explain to me how their week's been going, their calls have been going, I get emotional every dang time because that was my dream. And I just remember seeing these survivors at the beginning of 90-Day U-Turn, and the sunken in eyes and the hopelessness, and feeling like they didn't have any hope whatsoever. And now they have a community, and they have a granny like I have a granny, and they have hope. And it's just insane how God has worked it out and has brought purpose for the pain. So it's surreal, but it's so dang cool at the same time. And now it's like, okay, let's do more. Let's keep going, because this is working. Lives are changing. Let's keep going.
Yeah, now we're like, oh, we need to create a granny survivor hangout time. Like,
yes.
When are we going to hang out? Like, let's do a weekend together. Now we're like thinking and create. And that's the fun part about growth, is that it never ends, right? We are always, all of us are on this journey. And so is business, so is ministry. It's always evolving.
Always.
So what types of things do you think you learned along the way of youth ministry, and what things do you remember seeing in that journey that could maybe be beneficial for parents to hear? Like, let's go educational for a second. And,
sure.
So
yes, my husband and I were in full-time ministry for 8.5 years in a military town. And I feel like during that time, we were so busy being in ministry that we at times neglected our own family ministry. And we weren't as aware of the voices and the influences that were surrounding our kids. And especially, they were in public school at the time. And, I don't speak ill of public school, but I do think that, you've heard the saying, you are the sum of the 5 people you hang around the most. And if your children become friends with people who don't have the same moral values, who don't have proper adult guidance and in their lives, then they're naturally going to go down a path that is not healthy. And, we did go through quite a bit with our middle 2 girls. And during that time, they were in the middle school to high school era. One of my daughters was hurt in our home. And that was a very hard season as a parent, to feel like we're out here serving and loving people, but we missed the mark with our own kids. And so I feel like if I'm to look back at the lesson and see what would I've done differently, I would have been way more involved in their personal lives. Probably would have homeschooled. That's a whole nother story. But
I'm here with you.
But you can't outparent 8 hours a day swimming in a cesspool and a garbage pool. Like, I feel like we can't isolate our children, but I feel like we do need to insulate them. And I would have done a little bit better at insulating them during those critical years of influence in their life.
Do you feel like it was, just not knowing, really, on your part?
A lot of it was ignorance. A lot of it was not really seeing, kids have ways of getting to do what they want to do and sneaking around and figuring out a way that parents won't find out. And not to say that I don't completely 100% blame myself, but there are things I would have done differently. I would not have given them phones. There's just too much access to too much out there that they're just not emotionally able to make wise decisions.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. My son is harping on me about wanting a phone. All of his friends have phones. And you still eat your boogers. So, like, you can't have a phone. I'm sorry. Let's be real. Like, you are not prepared for a phone.
Yeah, I get it. And if I was doing, it would be a lot different in this day and age. I mean, there's so much out there vying for their attention, vying to pull them in a direction. There's such an agenda of the enemy. And I want to empower them and give them every opportunity to make a wise decision and a God decision. So, yeah.
So what has it been like since then, since that realization for you, and then trying to kind of polish up that relationship and getting back into a healthier, being able to see them the way that you wish you had back then, I guess.
Yeah. So we've been through so much with our kids, and just a lot of life, a lot of reaping of decisions that were made. And the beautiful thing that is, God is such a redemptive and a restorative God. And they come back to mom and dad, you know, when they know that they need to get things right. And it's been such an honor to kind of help walk them through some of these seasons, walk them out of some of these seasons, be a godly voice, love them in their mess, and encourage them, into the next stage. And yeah, we have a great relationship now, and I'm so thankful that, when times get tough, they come back to mom and dad, and they know where their safe places. And that's, at the end of the day, what we want to create as parents. Like, they know that we're going to stand for morals and principles, but they also know that we're going to love them no matter what. Like, it doesn't matter where they are in their mess. We're going to love them and stand with them and help walk them out of it.
You said earlier, loving people where they are, but also guiding them on their journey. I don't remember your exact words, but
calling them up, like, let me show you how God sees you.
Yeah.
And just calling them up to that instead of settling for what the world has told them that they'll only be.
Is there anything that was helpful on the healing journey? Because we do have a lot of parents listen to this podcast who have children who have been hurt and are now on their own healing journey. As somebody who's on the outside, like, you can't do it for her, right? So how, as a supporter, are you able to guide that healing process?
I think taking what's hidden in the darkness and bringing it to the light is so important. Exposure to the light. The more we suppress, the more we keep things hidden and aren't really willing to face and talk about the hard things. Like, you can't really heal what you won't deal with. So there's a saying that I've used over the years. I was like, whatever God reveals, he'll heal if you're willing to deal with it. But he is also a gentleman, and he's not going to force you to walk through trauma and healing if you're not ready. So to the degree that we are, like, really ready to deal with our stuff, there's healing available.
Yeah, I feel like for me, there were so many times when I wanted the healing without the dealing. And you're right, you have to deal before you can heal. And that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah, because you don't grow on the mountaintops, you grow in the valleys. And it's only through the stretching and the breaking down and the crushing and the pressing that we grow. And so I think that's, like, it's creating a safe place for people to be able to bring that stuff out so that it can be dealt with. Like, even sometimes just vocalizing it, like, there's this breaking of that stronghold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. It breaks chains. It brings freedom. Absolutely. It brings things to the forefront of your brain, like Denise has taught me, the subconscious stuff that we are feeling and processing that we don't even realize.
Yeah.
And we voice it, and it gets brought to the front, and then you can deal with it.
And it loses its power. It loses its grip little by little. Sometimes it's immediate, but sometimes it's little by little.
Yeah. And that's exactly why 90 Day U-Turn is not just a training program where you listen to me talk. I have a lot of great information to say, but change happens with the implementation. So there's questions that you get to answer, right? You get a partner every week to talk through it, because there's power in speaking about your own life. And that's where the shifts start to happen, because you're breaking chains. You're creating intentions. You are on the path. And as we say, it's kind of onion layer after onion layer. Eventually you get to that core and you're like, look at how far I've come.
Absolutely. I love that.
So what would you say to somebody who's interested in the Granny program, maybe curious to join, but maybe a bit hesitant or scared or uncertain of themselves?
You don't have to have it all together to start. Someone once told me, to help someone, to lead someone, you just need to be one step ahead of them. Like, it doesn't have to be like this, years and years and years of healing and therapy and trauma, relief and all these types of things. Like, just a little bit ahead of someone, to love them where they are and to kind of take them on the journey with you.
Yeah, it's not a therapy relationship, right? That's not the goal. They have their own counselors. They have their own supports. You are just another secure adult. And when I was in the counseling world, when I was young, right? So I was 24 when I started as a counselor. So they gave me all the teenagers, as you can imagine. So I had a lot of teenagers on my caseload. And after a while, they weren't in crisis anymore, but they still needed a consistent, secure, healthy adult. And so I still, for years, I saw these kids once or twice a month. And some ended up being the first ones in their family to graduate high school. I had some really cool stories, and that we weren't solving immediate problems, but it was still so important for me to be a part of their support system.
Yes, I think that's what you said is so good. A consistent, secure, healthy adult. Yeah. That's what the Granny program is just being that consistency, being a safe place, being someone that's healthy. Like, God forbid, someone's trying to like dump their problems on a survivor that's walking out their own, like, that's not the place for it. No, I mean, yes, I have my issues. We all do. Like, that's the thing about life. None of us escape trauma.
Right.
We all go through trauma. We all have a trigger of some sort that leads back to some past pain or hurt. We're all on a healing journey. And one of my mentors, I used to lead worship, and she was someone that just poured into me, believed in me when others didn't, believed in me when I hardly believed in myself, and just spent so much time in that relational aspect with me. And one of the things that she said was, always leave people better than you found them. And so that's just kind of become my life goal, is just to leave people better than I found them.
Oh, I love that. I know, like, for me in my relationship with my granny, one of the things that I value is that I can be real. If I'm feeling crappy that day, I can show that. If I'm feeling happy and excited about something, I can show that. I don't have to put on a persona for her. I can just be my true, authentic self. And she accepted me as such. And then I've been able to do that now with other people. I've gotten brave enough to be myself around other people. But it started with her and her accepting me as who I was.
So good.
Yeah. Awesome. Any other thoughts, Rachel?
Oh, I just thank you for being here. I thank you for all you're doing, and your heart and your wisdom. You've always got things that stir up in my head for weeks to come after I've talked with you, because it's so good. So I appreciate all that you pour into me with our time together.
It's my pleasure. I think I've just had some aha moments today just in us talking. So this has been good.
Yes. Well, Laurel, thank you for your yes. Your yes has a domino effect. And because it's impacting the survivor, and it's impacting everyone she encounters and the growth that she has. But your yes, not just for the Granny program, but for years of supporting people where they are, but saying God's not done with you yet. And I think that's a beautiful message for everyone to hear, is we love you where you are, but we're not done yet. And our job is to support you on this journey as you discover all that God created you to be. So thank you for being here and for being a part of the Granny program. We so appreciate you and your heart. And if you are listening, are curious or interested in becoming a Granny, go to our website, stopsuffering.com, and let us know.
Nope.
You're correct. Stopsuffering.org. Dang it. Stopsuffering.org. The link is in the show notes. But there's a Granny tab, and you can reach out to us and let us know it's something that you're interested in. And we typically, our goal is to pair every survivor who desires it after 90-day U-turn. And so we may have some people come up in the next couple months. But then we also have a group starting in January. So whenever you reach out, what we'll be able to do is support you and prepare you. And then when the next round, we'll match you with somebody who we feel like would be a good, a good match.
Yep, exactly. We're getting close to 25 episodes.
We're getting close to 25 episodes. Yes. And so we are going to, on the 25th episode, we're doing a big giveaway, and we're going to invite you guys into a Zoom room with us to go through some training, but then also create some space for Q&A and connection time, because we're not here to be alone either. We want to invite you guys into the conversation and be a part of the community with us.
So awesome.
Yay. Well, all right, you guys. Thank you again, Laurel, for your time and wisdom today. You guys share any aha moments in the show notes below, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much for listening to this powerful episode of Stop Suffering in Silence. If you are interested in booking Rachel to speak at your school, your church, or on your podcast, then please email openblindeyes@protonmail.com. If you are interested in sponsoring a survivor on their healing journey and would like to donate to Stop SIS, then please check out the link in the description box or show notes below, or you can email stopsis@protonmail.com. And finally, if you are currently suffering in silence, or you know somebody who is, whether they're dealing with a current trauma or one from the past, then we will always recommend that you reach out to your local resources and find a counselor that you can trust, because nobody is meant to suffer alone. Have an amazing week, and thank you for being here.